Welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today I have a little bit of a last-minute episode change. So we were going to be talking about the history of medicine in the military, but we're going to be saving that one for next week. And instead, I decided to talk about the history of the Downtown Association. So as I said, we have a last-minute change in the episodes, and I decided to talk about the history of the Downtown Association right now. And as I'm recording this episode, it is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. So on Monday evening, April 7th, the City Council made the decision to dissolve the Downtown Association and the BIA, the Business Improvement Area, and take it under their control. And this has sort of left the whole sort of downtown community, business community, in sort of maybe a state of shock, I guess, and unknown is sort of the best words that we can come up with right now. And so I thought it was sort of fitting to talk about the history of the Downtown Association, who they are, and what they do. So if we look back, the first real iterations of the Downtown Association could actually be seen as the Sault Retail Merchants Association. And this is the sort of first group of merchants in Sault Ste. Marie that we sort of start to see these retail merchants getting together to take care of their area, to help promote and improve their businesses. This was actually a branch of the Board of Trade, and so other cities, the Board of Trade was sort of all across Canada, and also other cities had then branches off of that for their own Retail Merchants Association. So we can see ours, the first real mention that we see is in a 1919 article when they're discussing hosting their second annual picnic, meaning that they had to have been around at least since 1918. The Board of Trade was a group of merchants focused on promoting local businesses, but with a bit more emphasis on trade. So that's why they sort of branch off into the Retail Merchants Association. And so they were, supporting and promoting their businesses. But then in 1925, it's sort of interesting, we see the issue of street lighting being brought up. And it was finally addressed by a policy adopted by the City Council. But the Sault Retail Merchants Association actually helped to bring this to a head. So it was really them that helped to push this forward. So not only would street lighting help to improve their businesses, but it would also help to improve the safety of the community. So the new street lights would be covered under the local improvement plan. The property owners were to cover 2/3 of the cost, and the city would cover the last. Here we see instances of the Merchants Association taking care of the community. They are trying to make their area that they serve safer and more welcoming, just as our DTA does today. In 1928, they are actually named in the newspaper under a list of associations and clubs. In 1934, we actually see them starting to establish their own credit bureau. And here in 1942, there was a fundraiser for soldiers overseas, and this is where we actually see sort of two merchants associations. One was for the Gore Street section, and the other for Queen Street. And then we have mention in 1947 of them when they helped to host the Northern District Council Convention. And then they kind of seem to disappear after that. We don't really see the name, the Retail Merchants Association appear again. So pretty much, poof, they kind of disappeared. But in 1951, we hear about the Sault Ste. Marie Retail Food Merchants Association. And so that was composed of butchers, grocers, and greengrocers. So greengrocers, I guess, sort of were more of the produce sellers. So you sort of see this group coming about and focusing more on the food sales. And so as we sort of see that the Retail Merchants Association disappear, it sort of seems to have brought about a downfall in the downtown, because then in 1959 there was an article about how the business district of the Sault was going downhill. The community was saying that it wasn't their concern if the area went downhill, but that of the business owners. The public was saying they could take their business elsewhere. And sort of like across the country, there was talk of shopping malls and even plazas becoming popular and threatening downtowns. So with the sort of decline in the downtown and these other sort of shopping districts or these other shopping areas forming, they just seem to have brought about a new group of local merchants who came together. And also sort of in 1959 was when they were sort of first talking about bringing a shopping mall to the Sault. So that was also sort of spurring this next thing we have here. Was in that same 1959 article, they're talking about the new organization called the Downtown Business Association. So here it's where we see the first real instance of downtown association, sort of what we have today. And a year later, we hear that the group is planning a downtown beautification program, and they also called this a downtown restoration plan. So here we have another group of merchants coming together and forming a group to take care of their area, to make it more welcoming, and in turn promoting and supporting their businesses. And this is sort of like in reaction to the events that are going on around them, like the decline in their business area. In June of 1964, there was an article talking about the Norwich Plan to revitalize the downtown. So the Norwich Plan is based on a successful street revitalization project carried out by the British Civic Trust in Norwich. The Sault was around 100, like one of 100 Canadian cities visited by a team of Norwich planners who gave insights into how their downtowns could be improved upon, including beautification via planting trees, removal of old signage, renovations, and facelifts of buildings in disrepair, and also reworking the parking in the downtown core to make it more accessible for shoppers. And in this 1964 article, we actually see that their area of focus to start off with was Gore Street. Then later that year, in November, there was an article talking about how 200 Sault businesses between Dennis and East joined the Downtown Merchants Association so as I was saying, there were talks, there were plazas being built in Canada and drawing businesses sort of away from the downtown. And one example we have of that is Churchill Plaza, which opened in 1961. So the downtown merchants remained optimistic that they would survive and continue to improve their area and draw business. They were adding downtown Christmas lighting that would happen sort of like mid-November and then continue on for the season. They also had the Santa Claus parade, anything to bring in more foot traffic. In 1967, we then see the downtown shopping area being called vital to the Sioux. Yet there were still some members of the public that felt the downtown was not their concern and that they should not be worried if it's in like a recession or a downfall or things like that. They said the city was expanding and the new center should be elsewhere, but there were still those who wanted to preserve our downtown. By the early 1960s, interest in historic downtowns was waning and consumers were drawn to new shopping centers and malls. And this is evident in the feedback we were getting from the public and that we can see in the old newspapers on the state of the downtown. And so the merchants were the ones who really had to step up and care for the area. So earlier you heard me talk about the Board of Trade. Well, the Board of Trade was all across Canada, and it actually evolved into the Chamber of Commerce. So our Chamber of Commerce here in 1973 was working on the Norwich Plan with the Norwich Committee to come up with a plan for the downtown. So we last heard from the Downtown Merchants Association, like their name being said, in 1964. But by 1973, they were gone. So that's why we actually see the Chamber and the Norwich Committee taking control of the revitalization of downtown. So all these sort of gaps that we have of where the local merchants groups disappear, we have found sort of some evidence to show that it was sort of because the city had actually taken over control of that group, and because it started out as a group of merchants for the merchant area, having it being controlled by the city, they didn't have the same way to sort of help the area, the same drive, the same desire, like always being right in that middle to try to work together to solve it. And so that's sort of what we saw happening, and so that's why we always see the merchants having to come together again to rebuild. And now the Chamber of Commerce is still sort of that group that is for all the merchants of a city, and so they were doing their best to sort of help improve the area for this one big huge group of merchants here in the downtown. So they had local architect Gordon Smedley render plans for Queen Street, including a new color scheme, a 7-foot wide canopy between March and Spring Street, also the removal of all overhead hanging signs to make the sidewalks feel wider. Also by 1974, the committee chaired by Ben Bregman had completed phase 1 of the plan with, quote, the council's total backing. So the committee had been working closely with the city's Parks and Recreation Commissioner, Harold Brain, to plan a 3-phase program. So phase 1 was the installment of planter boxes of trees and shrubs to be installed between Church and Gore. Over a 10-year period, many building facades were updated, and in 1975, all the overhead signs were removed. Then phase 2 included plans to update alleys, rear entrances, and the installment of benches. Phase 3 included building a Queen Street semi-mall, for which they hired New York City-based Lawrence Alexander and Company to write a feasibility report in 1974. This report, dubbed the Alexander Report, was released in 1976 and suggested widening sidewalks, eliminating on-street parking, and investing in flowers, trees, and canopies. Probable results would include a rise in tourism and general growth in the downtown core. So we can sort of see that phase 1 and 2 were sort of completed, but phase 3, the biggest one, was a really big project that they were talking about for a long while. An article from 1974 stated the basis for the adoption of this downtown beautification program is the fear that downtown business districts could deteriorate if imaginative action is not taken now, and the belief that downtown Queen Street continues to be the core of the community, the center of activity of the city. These represent valid foundations for the implementation of a City Council supported program of revitalization like the Norwich Plan. An article from April 1974 stated, quote, "The basis for the adoption of this downtown beautification program is the fear that downtown business districts could deteriorate if imaginative action is not taken now, and the belief that downtown Queen Street continues to be the core of the community, the center of activity of the city. These represent valid foundations for the implementation of a City Council supported program of revitalization like the Norwich Plan. The basis for preventing the deterioration of the downtown business district is not sentiment, but the loss of substantial business assessment should property values in this area decrease. And despite development in areas away from downtown Queen Street on the Second Line and Great Northern Road, for instance, the gathering place, the place where professional people and government buildings are located, the place where there is the largest collection and variety of stores, the place where the theaters are. This is the downtown Queen area," end quote. They also felt it important to implement these changes as the Station Mall opened in 1973, which began to draw business away from the downtown, and the downtown merchants were feeling the effects. By 1974, the Norwich Committee felt they lacked the influence and structure to make changes they wanted to make in the downtown. On August 27, 1974, the Norwich Committee was reconstructed and incorporated to become the Queenstown Development Association. The newly incorporated organization was chaired by Ben Bregman of Lake Superior Investments. The first VP was Paul Moore of Moore's Appliances. Second VP was Thornley Virene of Virenes. The secretary was Wayne Bishop of The Man Store, and treasurer was bank manager Jim Lowen. This executive was part of a 22-member board made up of downtown business owners and employees passionate about preserving and revitalizing Queen Street and supporting their fellow business owners. In the 1976 article announcing the Queenstown formation, spokesman Gary Demansky stated, quote, "There is less strength in committees. We've gotten beyond the Norwich Plan now. We are looking at Queenstown as a never-ending organization." The organizers felt they could accomplish more with a, quote, definite and organized body such as Queenstown. A bylaw was put in place by the city in 1977 designating the downtown as a BIA, a business improvement area. Apart from regular promotional activities, a council-appointed board would also oversee improvements, beautification, and maintenance, not normally provided by the city. The cost of these improvements would be covered by the downtown businesses, not non-commercial ratepayers. In a March 1977 article, Ben Bregman explained to the public that this system of self-taxation would keep the downtown, quote, strong and dressed up. Using the new Christmas lights as an example, 60% pay and all benefit. In 1976, John Rhodes stated, quote, "The downtown is the heart of every community and expresses, in very real terms, the character and history of the people who live in it," end quote. And so I find this really true. Whenever you go to see a city and you go to the downtown, that's where you really find everything. That's where sort of the heart of tourism usually is, especially in smaller towns. The tourists want to come in and see the downtowns, walk the downtown street. It's focused usually mainly on one main street, and people go there, walk up and down, go to the stores, and that's what they were really trying to create here in the Soo, was this area where people wanted to spend their time, create a nice welcoming atmosphere with trees and plants and benches to encourage people to stay and walk and sightsee and also hopefully shop. So with the talks of the semi-mall, we have the ODRP, or the Ontario Downtown Revitalization Program, and they got a loan that would cover 2/3 of the approved project cost. The application for the funding was put forth for the semi-mall between Brock and East in 1977. This funding would also go to repairing sidewalks and roads in the downtown, as well as updating the sewer systems. The urgency for the Queen Street semi-mall increased in 1978 when the talks of expanding the Station Mall were going on. At the time, the Queenstown director, Frank Caputo, stated, "If this plan proceeds as proposed, we may see the destruction of Queen Street in less than 5 years." He argued on the behalf of the downtown, stating that they would face a 50 to 60% loss in business, resulting in the destruction of a core tax base, which would place a significant financial burden on other taxpayers. He also stated that neglect of the downtown and support for the businesses that could turn the area into a, quote, crime-filled slum. Other issues facing Queen Street at this time in the late 70s included a noticeable increase in crime and vandalism, as noted in an October 1979 article. To the relief of the Queenstown Association and the city, funding from the ODRP was approved, and the revitalization program was slated to start in 1980. A public forum was held to discuss the revitalization plans, with 3 options presented. 1. Straight revitalization, a semi-mall, and a modified semi-mall with a courthouse area plaza as a focal point. The third option was chosen, with the consensus being that the plaza would be built at a later date when funds would become available. Included in the $3.2 million renovation, there were work to roads, sewers, and sidewalks, also new street lighting, new benches, bus shelters, movable planters, improved linkages to off-street parking lots situated behind Queen Street, and the implementation of a marine theme throughout the downtown to highlight the Sioux's connection to the Great Lakes shipping channel. The work was to be completed in sections, starting with Dennis to Elgin, which included the creation of the Bingham parking lot, followed by March to East, and finally the stretch between Elgin and March. The link between Queen Street and the Station Mall was also lobbied for, though the project did not come to fruition, as Al Josine, the owner of Station Mall at the time, would not agree to the linkage. The linkage issue held up funding for some time, as ODRP would not release the funds until a plan for the proposed link was in place. In July of 1980, City Council approved the expansion of the Station Mall, prompting an outcry from the Queen Street merchants. Alderman Ferris, who voted in favor of reducing the size of the mall expansion, stated, quote, "I know then I'm licked. I think we're really going to pay for this in the long run, because instead of working out the whole concept of downtown, we've got it well divided. We've only got one concept. That's the ACR concept." End quote. This defeat weighed on the downtown merchants, with some wanting to pull out of the downtown revitalization plan, as it would now jeopardize the proposed success of the semi-mall, which would open after the Station Mall expansion. This issue caused further delays, despite the province being, quote, committed to Sault Ste. Marie. In mid-July of 1980, some talks were once again had on whether or not the downtown revitalization and semi-mall would go ahead. Queenstown Vice President Paul Moore stated to the Sioux that, quote, "One thing should be known. Without Queenstown, there is no way a semi-mall will be built. The city can't get their loans without us." End quote. On July 24th, the merchants voted overwhelmingly to support and move ahead with the project. Despite major hurdles faced by the Queenstown Association in the first 5 years of operation, they began their legacy of hosting community events, including community days, sidewalk sales beginning in 1977. They increased parking spaces to over 1,000, and by 1980 they had a membership of over 230. Ben Bregman and Murray Davis of the Queenstown Board represented the Sault Ste. Marie and the community renewal strategies for the 1980s symposium in Toronto, coming back to the Sioux with new perspectives on how to solve the issues facing the downtown neighborhood. The forum's presentations included the Downtown Development Corporation, the role of the municipality, promoter of downtown revitalization, and retail/commercial theme areas. Do they work? Construction commenced on Queen Street in the spring of 1981, starting with a groundbreaking ceremony on May 11th. Free shuttle bus services were offered downtown during the construction, painted in the Queenstown colors. During the construction, businesses were hard hit. Stores in the affected area ran a variety of campaigns to maintain business, including a Freedman's Inconvenience Sale, Bumbaco Sports giving away Queenstown hats with a chance to win a $50 store credit, and Global Travel offering free delivery of airline tickets. Dorothy McIntyre's Coral Coffee Shop was hit with a decrease in sales, so her restaurant staff donned hard hats and blue jeans and cut their prices. The gimmick worked and business improved. Although construction was no doubt affecting businesses in the area, the economy was taking a hit as well. By July, the new Bingham parking lot was open and several blocks of road and sewers were redone. The Queenstown Gazette, a bulletin ran in the Sioux Star, was published weekly with notices from businesses and construction updates. An uptick in vandalism coincided with the construction, much to the dismay of local citizens. Windows were smashed and awnings were torn and damaged. A downtown curfew was suggested for those under 16. Most downtown shop owners didn't agree with the curfew, as they suggested it was older people doing the damage. Susie Palumbo of Perillo Shoes told the Sioux Star, quote, "We get a pretty rough crowd coming out of the bars around here. It's getting to the point where you don't want to walk around alone at night. And this is Sault Ste. Marie, not some big city," end quote. Although complaints were made for both individuals and the Queenstown Association, city police stated the issue facing the area were, quote, no greater than usual. A ceremony for the completion of road work was held on September 28, well within their budget of $3.3 million. The results were deemed quite impressive, and the final work on the revitalization program was estimated to be finished in November of 1981, in time for the holiday shopping season. On November 30th, the Queenstown Association launched their, quote, Shop Queenstown for Christmas campaign to drive business to the downtown core. Another part of the revitalization included Queenstown dividing its service area into 5 squares and introducing new signage to assist shoppers, and launched this program during the holiday season. The next year, in 1980, we saw Queenstown collaborating for the first time with Bon Sioux for an event called, quote, Bon Sioux Queenstown Snow Madness. Businesses had later shopping hours, they decorated their storefronts for a window dressing contest, and they also planned special events in store. This model of Bon Sioux Queenstown Snow Madness was used again in 1983, also with the introduction of Moonlight Magic. Other new events followed, including a Queenstown organized fashion show for the Canadian Cancer Fund. The Queenstown Association advocated for the Sault Ste. Marie to be located on Queen Street, a mutual beneficial move to bring both local residents and tourists to the downtown. So we were very happy with that as we sit here in the downtown right now. In 1982, we actually see that their membership had increased to 240 businesses. And the board of directors actually toyed with the idea of hiring a full-time manager. Director Murray Davis wanted to see Queenstown run and organize it as an enclosed mall would be. Merchants were surveyed, and after the majority voted in favor, the board decided to hire an executive director for the organization of a year-long term. Udo Roque was named the first Queenstown Association manager on March 26, 1982. The Queenstown Association acquired office space above the Man's Store at 540 Queen Street East. To support the 1982 budget increase, a property levy increase was introduced. In 1987, we see Pym Street to East also being refurbished and being called Heritage Square, and it officially became part of Queenstown in January 1988. So in 1999, for, quote, marketing purposes, the Queenstown Association formalized the use of the name Downtown Association. So here we are, finally with the present name Downtown Association that we know of today. This also coincided with significant provincial legislative changes where business taxes and assessments were eliminated. The responsibility for all commercial taxes shifted entirely to business property owners. For Queenstown, it meant that approximately 150 commercial property owners were the members. Amendments to the Municipal Act in 2001 recognized that portions of tenant rents were applied to taxes, and memberships were extended from just landowners to include commercial properties. The Downtown Association has a membership base of approximately 400 members, including 150 building owners and approximately 250 tenants. The BIA formally covers an area more than 1 kilometer in length, recognizing that there are impacts and common interests with our BIA that include more than just our section of the downtown. The Downtown Association began to champion a concept of a larger downtown core to include the Station Mall to the south, the Gateway site to the west, the hospital area to the east that they're now hopefully going to be working on, and maybe adding some more retail over there. And they wanted to define this area as river to rail. And so we see the downtown wanting to sort of grow and expand its area of operations. They host so many events throughout the year that are really important to all the local businesses, because that's where we see a lot of the foot traffic coming from. Just last year for our Moonlight Magic, we saw a record number of over 800 people coming here into the museum during Moonlight Magic. Now, I don't know if that's the highest numbers we've ever seen, but for as long as I've been here, for around 4 years, that is the most we've ever seen. So maybe pre-COVID years, we had a lot more, but last year, considering that it was raining and sort of miserable out, people still came out. People were still coming in and happy and getting ready to celebrate the holiday season. And so all of these businesses were able to have people come in and start their holiday shopping, maybe get some ideas of wanting to come back later. All of these events that the Downtown Association does are so vital for us. And so that's why I felt it so important to talk about them and their history today. This was sort of a brief overview. As I said, it was sort of a last minute change, so I might have sort of maybe gotten some things mixed up, maybe some things a little bit out of order, and I probably definitely left a lot of things out. But to see a more comprehensive description of the history of the downtown, be sure to keep an eye out for our upcoming blog on their history as well. So that blog will be coming out soon. Hopefully, we want to make sure that it has as much of a history as we can find. So from us here at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, we want to say the biggest of thank yous to our Downtown Association, because not only do they continue to help us out now, but they also were big supporters in helping us come to be here in the old post office building. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and if you have any more topics you would like me to discuss or people you would like me to interview, please feel free to contact me. My information is always listed in the description or show notes. So thank you for listening. Bye.
Have you been to your local museum lately? Visit us at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, located in downtown Sault Ste. Marie, the one with the big clock tower on the top. Our hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesday to Saturday. We have 3 floors of exhibits that we constantly work on updating. The whole family is welcome, as we have activity sheets and scavenger hunts with prizes for every kiddo, a discovery gallery full of hands-on learning, and more interactive elements scattered throughout the museum. And don't forget to come say hi and let us know you're a listener of the podcast.